Welcome to Maine Concerns, where our news team gives you a closer look at the events that happened around Maine this week.
Good morning. Thanks for joining us. I'm your host, Cindy Campbell. The Next Step Domestic Violence Project in Ellsworth works to put an end to domestic violence. During a conversation this week with Executive Director Dorathy Martel, I was amazed to learn just how many different services they provide. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about domestic violence, and then we'll talk about Next Step. Domestic violence takes many forms, doesn't it, Dorathy? It isn't all about hitting.
No, that is very true. Domestic violence, domestic abuse can be physical. It is often emotional. It's about power and control. So there are a lot of different ways that can look in different relationships.
Would you say that emotional abuse is often a precursor to physical abuse?
I think that that's very likely true, because if people started out being physically violent, they would be avoided. And so it's easier to present yourself as a nonviolent person because you don't hit. But if you are insulting someone, if you're calling them names, if you're telling them they're worthless, if you are telling them where they can go and what they can do, then the violence almost seems like part of that pattern, and people are already sensitized to that abuser.
Right. As someone who has been involved in a relationship with some of these kinds of abuses, that emotional abuse can really kind of sneak up on you, can it?
It certainly can. And it might be easy to dismiss at first as your own sensitivity, because that's probably what the abuser is telling you. Yeah. And so it tends to feed on itself. It is easier to victimize someone if you set the stage for breaking them down emotionally first, so that they start to question themselves instead of questioning the person who's doing the abuse.
Right. It really does feed on your self-confidence and make you question everything.
Yes.
Yeah.
And sometimes even one's own sanity.
Right. What are some signs, Dorathy, that people can look for in relationships that could point to someone who could be potentially abusive?
I think that just to approach it from the other side first,
okay.
I think if you're not seeing that the person you're involved with treats you the way they want to be treated, that's a sign right off. So if their expectations for how they should be treated are very different from how they treat you, I think that that is a pretty strong sign that something's out of balance. That in itself is not abuse, but it does tell you that somebody puts themselves above what they put you or other people. And then small things can start, like small sarcastic remarks that, again, seem like nothing in themselves. But I think we've all watched people in couples where one person just says things that aren't very nice and then laughs about it.
Right.
I was in a store just yesterday, and I watched a couple shoe shopping, and she wasn't sure about the pair of shoes she was trying on, and he started saying, well, you know, there's just a tiny bit of leather in those, and I'm much bigger than you, and what I pay for my shoes shouldn't cost as much as what your shoes are, but if you want them, you can have them. And he just kind of kept pushing and pushing and pushing about how she was smaller, and it was okay for him to spend $150 on a pair of shoes, but for her, maybe not so much.
Right.
And, you know, that in itself, again, if it was just about money, that might be okay, but it seemed like it was part of a bigger pattern because of the way she was responding, and she got quieter and quieter and quieter.
Right.
So it's minimizing the other person. It's telling them what they can and can't do. So if somebody is telling you, no, you can't go out with your friends tonight, or you can go out with your friends, but I really won't like it,
right.
Those are some signs that that person wants to control what you can do. If somebody is constantly running down your friends and family and making it very hard for you to bring them around him or her, that's a sign as well, because that leads to isolation.
Right. Him or her is a very good point. I want to jump on this just for a minute. I think when a lot of people think of domestic abuse, they assume that it's a man abusing a woman, but it can go in the opposite direction too.
It can go in the opposite direction. I think what we see with physical violence is that most of the physical violence tends to be men abusing women.
Right.
Emotional abuse, I think the numbers are probably a little bit closer. One of the things that we know for sure, though, is that a lot of domestic abuse is based on gender and the sense of men have traditionally in this culture had more rights. There are still people who believe that men are supposed to be in charge of the family and women should acquiesce to what a man believes. So although it does certainly affect men as well as women, there are some pieces of abuse that really are tied to gender or expectations about gender roles.
Right. Now, Next Step Domestic Violence Project actually has a quiz on the website, right? That people can take if they suspect they might be being abused.
Yes. And, a quiz like that it's a good starting point, but I would really recommend that rather than relying on the quiz that you call and talk to an advocate. Most people who think they're being abused are being abused.
Right.
If you've started thinking along those lines, there's usually a good reason for it. And really, we get, as individuals, to define how we feel about our relationships. So if something isn't right, it doesn't matter if it rises to someone else's definition. We can still help people talk through, well, what should I accept? What do I want in this relationship?
Right. Sometimes that's so important to have someone else who can give an objective eye to what's going on. Reaching out is tough, but that's the important first step.
It really is. And so many people call us and say, I'm not sure I should be calling you. But we're not just a crisis hotline, and we are going to be updating our website to reflect that you don't have to be in crisis to call us. We're here to listen. We really believe that equitable relationships, safe relationships, peaceful relationships are a goal in themselves. And we want to help people get there. And one of the ways to get there is to define what that means for yourself and to say, if that's not what's happening, I don't need to be in this relationship.
So what are some of the services that are offered at Next Step?
The service that most people first come to us through is our helpline, which is a 24-hour line, and we do have an 800 number, which is 1-800-315-5579. It's free and confidential, and anyone can call. So you can call because you're concerned about what's happening to you. You can call because you are concerned about a friend or family member. You can call just to ask questions about abuse. And what you will get on the other end of that call is a very highly trained advocate, sometimes a volunteer, sometimes a staff person, who will listen to you. And we don't tell people, you should do this. This is how to fix that, because we know that doesn't work. What we know is that what people need is to be heard, and then they need to be supported, and they need a direction to resources to help them. For some people, it's just, I need a new way of thinking about this relationship. I'm not in danger, but I'm not sure I'm happy. For other people, it's, I'm really afraid, and I don't know what to do about that. And then we might direct them to another service, like our legal services for help with a protection order or help with divorce and custody. We have a staff attorney. We have a lot of legal advocates who can go to court with people. We also have an emergency shelter, which is located in Washington County, but is available to people from both Hancock and Washington counties and elsewhere.
Okay.
And that is for people who are trying to flee an abusive situation and have no place safe to go. We have support and education groups. We have a child welfare liaison who can help people navigate the child welfare system if they are in a situation where they're not only being abused themselves, but their child is being abused as well. We have a licensed professional counselor on staff who does a particular kind of counseling of mental health issues that arise from being victimized. We have some supportive housing units where we can help people who may never have lived alone before or who are ready to move on from shelter or from a relationship where they lived with an abuser and had no place else to go, and they can have long-term housing, and we can work on employment, we can work on education, helping them get to the next stage in their life. We have face-to-face advocacy, so often people will just come to the door in our office in Ellsworth, our office in Machias, or by appointment at our outreach office in Calais, and just come talk face-to-face or fill out court paperwork.
You have a lot.
We have a lot, and
Wow.
that's one of the things I think people don't understand about us is that we try and look at people's whole lives, people who have experienced abuse and people who care about them, and say, okay, what else do they need besides just validation or just a court advocate, because it's complicated.
Yeah.
Abuse can affect your housing, it can affect your financial stability, and we try and look at the whole picture with people.
That's wonderful. What a great program. People can get more information on the website?
Yes, and I will say that we are in the process of rebranding, so soon you will see a new website with more up-to-date information, but the basics are here now, and you can also call the hotline anytime and just ask, okay, what do you do? So people should feel they're not tying us up. The line will roll over, and another person who needs help will get help.
Okay, and what is the website?
The website, this is a mouthful, it's nextstepdvproject.org.
Okay, and what's the hotline number?
Yes, it's 1-800-315-5579.
Find more information at nextstepdvproject.org. And if you're in an abusive situation, you can get help 24 hours a day at 1-800-315-5579.